it's time that we talk about this Jeezy and Jeannie Mai case, because both of them have finalized their divorce after 9 months of going through the courts. However, there's far more to this story. On the 14th of September 2024, Jenkins, better known as Jeezy or Young Jeezy, depending on your eras, has decided to file for divorce from Jeannie Mai after 2 years of marriage. They both have a daughter together, so you can reasonably infer that this is not going to be a straightforward divorce. Many have speculated why the couple are now getting a divorce. After all, Jeannie Mai was previously married to Freddie Artez, the actor, and they were married for a period of 11 years since 2007 that they decided to get together, but they divorced in 2018. However, unlike how straightforward that divorce with Freddie Artez was in 2018 for Jeannie Mai, this particular divorce is not going to be as straightforward as one may think. In the child aside, Jeannie Mai has actually made allegations of domestic violence against Jeezy, and since the divorce filing, this case has received a lot more publicity that I'm sure was more than intended by both parties. With a myriad of reports out there, and with just little snippets of the court documents in all of these outlets that are publishing it, it has raised a lot more questions than answers. So I reached out to Natalie Burrell, also known as Nat Lawyer Chick, a criminal defense lawyer that practices in the state of Maryland. She joined me to break down the legal procedures of a divorce, as well as the terminologies that can be found when you're reading these articles. And also, most importantly, she breaks down how a prenup and also domestic violence allegations impacts the divorce proceedings. I also got to learn more about Jeannie Mai in a moment of me having Heinz. Trust me, that's going to catch on. It should be a diagnosis in of itself for how forgetful I am. No, I'm very sorry, but I think she's from the Far East somewhere. Oh gosh, please don't cancel me. I'm not ready.
Don't get canceled over something you can just Google. Let me look it up. Hold on, Jeannie Mai. She is Chinese Vietnamese father and a Vietnamese mother.
Okay.
So she's mostly Vietnamese.
Nevertheless, join us for the Heinz Griff, the show that gets to the heart of the matter by having insightful and meaningful conversations. Hello, Natalie. Thank you so much for joining me once again. I love having you here, and welcome back. When you were here last time, we were talking about Jonathan Majors and the whole case with that. I really appreciate the knowledge that you give, your objectivity, because my chat were like, as you know, they were kind of pro Majors, but you were like, no, this fact's gotta come out. So it was really important. It was really important to have you back, because we have another case that's kind of modeled, and I call it modeled because it's so opaque, and I have so many questions to go through to kind of understand why it is opaque. But I don't know whether you have done divorce cases and anything like. Have you been through that line?
So I've handled some family cases. Yeah, I've handled some family cases, but never a divorce. And It is not my cup of tea. Not my cup of tea. I've helped some people like negotiate custody and file protective orders and things like that. But I haven't done a divorce before, because really criminal defense is all that I do. There was a period of time where I did workers' compensation litigation, which I hated. So it's mostly criminal defense for me. There's a surprisingly high amount of family cases, which includes, we include divorce and family law. There's a high amount of family cases that end up interacting with the criminal justice system. So you would have a client that's a criminal defendant that also has a companion family law custody case or divorce case, because a lot of the times what breaks up a relationship is DV. So that, is something I'm familiar with because I interact with it on that end.
Let's go into this Jeezy case, because it's very, he filed for divorce on the 14th of September. And in that divorce filing, he did want shared joint physical custody of the child. They had awarded joint legal custody on a temporary and permanent basis. What does this mean?
Okay, so there's two types of custody. There's physical custody and there's legal custody. Physical custody is who has the kid, right? Like who can watch them, spend time with them and make decisions while the child is physically with them. And legal custody is who makes the decisions for the child, like things like where do they go to school, where do they live, if what type of medications do they take, what type of medical treatment can you allow them to have or to refuse? Do you need to get one parent's permission in order to do anything legally with the child, right? Enroll them in school, things of that nature. Jeezy initially filed for sole physical, and then when Jeannie came out and said that he was abusing her, he withdrew his filing for sole physical. But sole physical would be only one parent gets to keep the child at all times, and they may, if they want to, allow the other parent to have visitation at certain points in time. But as sole physical, that parent gets to make all those decisions, right? So then you have joint legal, where you both get to make legal decisions for the child, or sole legal, where only one parent gets to make legal decisions for the child.
He also has a prenuptial agreement laid out in this complaint for divorce. How does a prenup impact a divorce proceeding? What usually goes on there?
It usually should help to speed things along because the parties have already pre-agreed before they got married. Sometimes have a post-nup after you get married, have already agreed to how they're going to split the assets. And people that come into marriages with a lot of means of their own will usually want to have these set up to protect their own assets, or else, you could have had a business venture before marriage that during the marriage your spouse starts to get an interest in, even though they had nothing to do with how this business venture was set up. So a lot of people of means will protect their assets in that way.
Now, the timeline of this is, I'm not sure if you know, but on the 7th, Jeezy spoke with Nia Long, but they didn't really go into divorce because I can imagine why. Obviously, there's ongoing litigation.
Yeah, he wouldn't want to do that.
Yeah, but to me, I already knew from then on the media play was going to happen. Before we move on, I want to know, private citizens like yourself or anyone cannot just request for these documents, and how comes the media companies do get these documents? Is it something that only a certain media companies can access because of the courts, or is it that they're given by the parties to the courts? To the media companies.
Oh, yeah. So these, unless they're filed in seal, are public record, and it's just about the local, like wherever it is they filed for divorce, wherever it is that the marriage was located, you would just have to send a request to that court to receive the paperwork, and sometimes you have to pay a fee for it. And that media knows how to do that. You have the same access that they do, because the access that extends to the media also extends to the public under the First Amendment. So definitely, the public can access it. It just is not easily accessible if they're not uploading it onto so sometimes a case will be very important or notable, and so they'll make like a website like Notable Cases or something like that, or you can just do a case search for it. But like in Maryland, for example, you would have to contact, if you're not a party to the case, you'd have to contact the clerk's office and request the public filings in order to get them, because they're just not available to the general public without requests. That's the only difference. It's just that they know how to request it.
And right there, may I actually offer an explanation as to why I have been unable to procure these documents and produce it for this particular video and have it available for you guys. As much as I hate to ask, do consider supporting the channel financially by becoming a member of this channel, or becoming a member of the Patreon channel for bonus content that we do on there. And believe me, the little that we do get does go a long way into improving the quality of this channel. So I do give you massive thanks in advance, and I understand it was a shameless plug, but after listening to Amber Heard scream like a banshee for probably hours on end, I think I've lost every ounce of shame that has been. So I know it's a shameless plug, but shame has gone out the window after I've listened to hours and hours of Amber Heard screaming like a banshee at Johnny Depp for the docuseries, which you can also find on the channel. It's linked up there. Play this, boy. I really have no shame after this, to be honest. Have I? On the 30th of November 2023, Jeezy filed for custody schedule demand. I don't know what this is. Can you please run me through that? What is that?
It sounds to me like he wants an actual formal schedule that's signed off on by the judge that she would have to abide by, because informal parenting time, she's the one that has primary physical custody right now, so she has the child the most of the time. And so he's asking for a more detailed accounting of when it is he's supposed to see his child. So hitting her up the day before, hey, I want to see the kid tomorrow, and she's like, no, that's not convenient, I have plans, or I have plans with the kids or something. That can cause a lot of tension and stress. That happens very frequently. People think that they can just on a case by case basis work out visitation, and it comes to find out that's the reason you're getting divorced. You guys get along. So it takes them a while to figure out that you need a formal parenting schedule to help with those issues. I know people don't like to do that, but it helps a lot when it comes to not having a bunch of conflict between the two parents.
On the 19th of January 2024, Jeannie Mai then goes and files, says that the prenup cannot be enforced, and because for reasons that she didn't have enough time to basically consider the whole thing, it was brought on her, according to what TMZ is reporting here, 5 days before their marriage. So she didn't really feel like they had enough time in order to sign their prenup. So what does, in the context of all of this, because we haven't got to DV allegations yet. That was made on April 25th, 2024. How would this play out in the face of the divorce now that she's made this argument?
So what she's talking about there, and what her attorney is talking about, is whether or not the prenup is even valid. So a lot of states have in the United States laws that you cannot sign prenup say a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks before the wedding, because it's seen as kind of coercive, that the parties are not given enough time to really think about what they're doing, maybe even consult with their own attorney, thing like that. So this is not so much her saying I personally feel this way. This is her attorney filing this because the law, I think in Georgia, it's 180 days. If you have anybody that watches that's a Georgia attorney, they can say better. But there is this thing that I remember reading, that it's 180 days before the wedding. That is usually the standard for signing of a prenup. Doesn't mean that it's automatically voided just because it was just a few weeks before the wedding or a week before the wedding, not necessarily, but it's one of the things that the court is going to consider. So apparently the prenup must be in favor of Jeezy. He must be the more moneyed spouse, have the most money, and is therefore protecting the most of his assets. And she wants access to those assets. And so she's trying to say that you should void out the prenup because she only signed it within weeks before. Things that courts are going to consider are going to include things like, did she have her own counsel ahead of time? What was her means to get counsel ahead of time before signing? So she had the money to hire an attorney, is just as educated and the same age as her husband, which she was. It's gonna weigh more in his favor that she knew what she was doing before she signed the prenup. However, it weighs against him that it was only a few weeks before the wedding instead of 180 days before the wedding, which is really what the standard should be. So that's what that's about.
In your opinion, do you think that her not deciding, sorry, let me rephrase. Do you think that her saying that she only had 5 days to consider is a realistic time, or is that something that could be sensationalized?
Yeah. 5 days is not a realistic amount of time before a wedding to sign a prenup. It just is not. And what's so funny is that instead of doing that, people really should just invest in the postnup, which is, you've gotten married, you're having a good time. Then maybe 6 months after, you guys sit with your lawyers and say, this is what we'll do if we split up. No one wants to think that they'll ever split up, but 50% of marriages end in divorce. So it's a good idea to have one. And so that it will be stronger if they did it afterwards, a few months after the marriage, because then they could say, oh, she's had plenty of time to sit down and think, there's been no pressure, no coercion. The other part, like the coerciveness of doing it 5 days before for either party, male or female, doesn't matter. Who it's really, it's the fact that, oh, you're not going to get to marry this person that you love, like a psych, this wedding that you've planned, the guests that you have coming, the venue that you have, none of that is going to happen if you don't sign this prenup. And so that's what the coercion is. It's not that the person is like stupid or anything. It's just that most people would feel like they have to sign after they have done all this investment into the wedding and they're hit with the prenup on the week before the wedding. So that's why, she might be able to avoid out that prenup. It's very possible. It's not I'm not saying it's 100% that that's going to happen because of the reasons I stated before, but still it could happen. It could be avoided. Mm-hmm.
If you were in a position to advise, and I know that you're not giving legal advice or anything like that, but if you were in a position to be like, would you advise people to go for prenups or postnups?
I think it depends on the individual couple, but I think that if you both have assets going into the marriage, especially if you're mature people, like people in their 30s and their 40s, take the time to do the prenup like 6 months from the wedding. Like take the time to do that, protect both of yourselves. I think that a postnup is more suited, and if you've just forgotten about it, you're just so in love, you're so hot and heavy, and you know how these celebrities are very like impulsive. A lot of them, they don't take a lot of time knowing someone before they marry them. That's why their divorce rate is like 70% or something, right? Like, so they barely know each other, they're getting married. So I would recommend those people to definitely do a postnup, because you're not going to change them to like thinking about it hardcore before they get married, but afterwards, once the honeymoon period is over, go and get that postnup. But I think a postnup is really beneficial for younger people getting married who are starting out with the same amount or lack thereof of assets. So think about like two college students getting married. Neither one of them really have anything, but once they get deep into the marriage, not even deep into, but like you see how each other lives, you see how each other spends on bills and things like that. It would be a good idea to get a postnup. And that's not saying that a prenup or a postnup is for everybody, but definitely if you have assets to protect or a career, like say you did schooling and stuff, PhD, JD, MD, before your spouse, you want to be careful about losing all the assets that you worked so hard for on your own. So definitely a prenup is good in those situations as well.
She did actually hire the prenup lawyers, and she basically brought them into the divorce, and Jeezy motioned to remove them. I don't know why he would do that. It would kind of, from what you've explained, it kind of bolsters his case.
Yeah.
Because she would
right. You had lawyers all along.
Right. So, but he has withdrawn that. But why would a party decide to even file that motion in the first place?
A couple of reasons. First and foremost, it would be that the good faith reason for that's supported by the law is you have a conflict because the prenup is at issue and they're essentially witnesses to what they advised her of. Like, did you advise her completely, and did she do this with total knowledge of what she was doing? Was this voluntary when she signed this prenup? And if she's going to try to say, oh, my lawyers didn't explain anything to me, then they become witnesses. But that's only if she tries and says that, but that would be one of her defenses to why the prenup should be voided, or one of her arguments for why it should be voided. And so if she were to argue that, then yes, they could become witnesses, and then they would be conflicted out, because you cannot represent a claim in which you are a witness. So that is one of the reasons why. That's probably not yet, that issue is not yet ripe, because they haven't gotten far enough along in the proceedings as far as the prenup is concerned for her to even assert that she didn't know what she was doing. All she's saying is that it wasn't enough time for her to consider it, or that she wasn't properly advised. She hasn't said that. But if she does say that, then it could become a conflict. Here's the bad faith reason for why somebody would try to get their ex-spouses or estranged spouses lawyers removed off the case. They're doing a good job and you want to get rid of them. They're doing a good job. You didn't expect it, and now you want to get rid of them. So it's like, conflict, remove them from the case. But, she's going to have her choice of lawyer no matter what. And the judge is not going to look very kindly on that unless there is actually some type of conflict of interest. So that's just me guessing. And I can see why that was withdrawn. But if it's a bad faith reason, it's because it's telling you that her lawyers are good and they're trying to get rid of them.
On the 25th of April, she released photos of her being injured, alleging domestic violence against Jeezy. I had a lot of questions because, as you know, as we just went through the timeline, this was not an allegation from the jump. This was something that's now, in my opinion, being brought in, because I was like, well, if you have this smoking gun, that would have been your first response filing. But I don't know how these things work. You might know a lot more. How does a DV allegation impact the divorce proceedings?
Okay, so let's go to the good faith, bad faith thing. If this is a good faith allegation, meaning it actually happened, she was abused, and she has pictures of her injuries, then the reason that that's considered by courts in divorce proceedings and child custody proceedings is because it informs the court about who is the more healthy parent for the child to be around. Obviously, you don't want to give a lot of parenting time to a parent who is physically abusive, because even if the abuse is only directed at the parent and not the child witnessing the abuse is still abuse of the child, right? It's
Absolutely.
In addition, there are provisions in many prenups that will void the prenup if there is domestic violence. So if there's proven domestic violence, then they cannot receive the protections under the prenup because they abuse their spouse. Also, infidelity is one of the ways to void the prenup as well. So in a state with no fault divorce, even a state with no fault divorce, if you can allege infidelity or abuse, you may be able to, given the provisions of the prenup, void the prenup out. I don't know what the provisions of their prenup are. What are the bad faith reasons for asserting this? I mean, obviously, it would cause him massive reputational damage, and it would give her an advantage in the divorce that she does not otherwise have if she's just making it up. But if he did actually abuse her, then those consequences should be visited upon him, because abusive spouses are statistically a danger to their children and should not benefit from abuse, So that's, again, I don't know. I really don't know enough about this case or either side or either person to say one way or the other. It is interesting that these allegations were not initially made. That could show deception. When I'm cross-examining somebody, a lot of times they're like, you didn't initially say this. Like, if months and months went by, you said nothing. Only when you had time to think of a lie did you come up with this story. So that's obviously something I would say if I was questioning her as a witness, if we actually had a contested hearing issue. But we do know that in the cycle of domestic violence, a lot of people are afraid to report domestic violence. They're embarrassed to report domestic violence, and they will not if they don't have to, because of the shame that comes with it. And if people think that she wants his money, which is always the allegation that's made against the woman, even though she's not poor, but if people think she wants his money, then it kind of doesn't make any sense to accuse him of physical abuse as in the public. She could use it as a bargaining chip to get him to pay her more money. And the more that you damage his reputation in public, the less money he'll be able to make, because people want to or collaborate with him if they think that he's an abuser. So I really don't know. That doesn't mean that people always make the best decisions. People will sometimes lie to protect themselves and end up making their situation worse because they didn't think far enough ahead. But I don't know what happened here. There can be a lot of reasons for this allegation to be made, but one of those reasons could be that the abuse actually happened. I just don't know.
It got convoluted even more because Jeezy was quick to deny the allegations, not just by releasing a statement saying that he was going to take this through the proper channels. He released photographs to the Jasmine brand. Well, allegedly. Let me say allegedly. How comes this is playing out in the public eye like this, in such a public way? Is this something that the parties are fault for, or is this just collateral damage of the media having access because of the First Amendment?
Yeah, so the First Amendment plays a big role in this. And now I'm having some questions about credibility now that you explained some of those things to me. I'll try to hold that thought for later. But yes, this all comes down to the First Amendment. Trials and cases, be they criminal, family, civil, are for the most part held in public and open court. And so the whole public has the right to access all of the case unless it's a juvenile involved or there is an order to seal. An order to seal can be for several reasons, like, public protection and things like that. But without an order to seal it, like I said at the beginning, anybody could call up the courthouse and ask for the filings, and with a fee they would have them. Anybody would. And so you have no right to privacy in your open court filings. You can like file to have like your address sealed and stuff like that, but without an order to seal the entire case, you won't get that. So that brings me to, go ahead.
Before you continue, I do apologize. I went to double check what I said earlier in regards to who filed to be sealed, and apparently it was the 1st of March 2024. Jeezy requested for the divorce records to be sealed. This is the one I saw at a much earlier time, but Jeannie Mai was the one that was actually requesting that it is not to be sealed and is to be, public, basically. So
yeah,
whatever you're gonna say, keep that in mind.
Yeah, it's opposite.
Okay, go.
Yeah, well, I'll still say it, but I'll switch the characters now. I don't understand why you wouldn't want your divorce to be private if it has this much national attention. Just because there are necessarily embarrassing things that come out with divorce, but also I think when the public pressure is not that high, people are more able to relax and then want to work their cases out. But that really concerns me. It concerns me when, but again, you have the right to it. You have a right to a public trial, and maybe you don't want anything to be covered up. You want everything to be out in the open. You don't want it to feel like there's a cover up going on.
Yeah, everything is equally embarrassing.
Let's all get embarrassed. Okay, I don't care. And I actually, I'm someone who shared my court cases before when I've been involved in court cases, so I get it. So the other thing, though, that it makes me think is I hope no one is sending photographs from either Camp Jeannie Mai or Camp Jeezy to bloggers, because sharing your case before it is finished with the public is extremely, extremely, extremely risky and can end up prejudicing your case. And this case involves a minor child, and they should really care about the protection of that minor child. This divorce could last longer than that marriage itself went on for. So they really should be careful the type of things that they let out into the public. I would not give photographs to the Jasmine brand or anything like that. If he was my client, I would be very, very angry with him or her if they did that. I just think that that's crazy.
Allegedly, I actually don't know.
Yeah, meaning file your photographs in the case. File it in the case. And if the media picks it up, oh, well, there's nothing you can do about that. But file it in the case. I'm always concerned about the credibility of any party who will make all these claims and accusations, but don't file those same claims and accusations in court, because you don't want to lie to the court. So I don't trust people that do that. Like you have given photographs to the Jasmine brand. I hope those same photographs are with the court. Otherwise, I don't believe in their veracity.
I appreciate everyone for watching this video. If you do like what you see and you find value from what we have to offer, do consider clicking that like button. It would be great to have you here and join us for all of our videos. Now that we've seen his response and her filing, how do the courts in the US usually test for these allegations? Is there liability if someone is turned out to be false? Is there even a test to see how valid it is that they've made these allegations? What tends to happen after the allegations are made?
Right. So the allegations were not made in a criminal court. So the judge is not going to be really deciding, like, is he guilty of it? But what will happen is the court is going to make an assessment when it comes to custody of the child and visitation with the child in the best interest of the child. Right. So if we're talking about the child custody issue, then if we're talking about whether or not the prenup is going to be voided for domestic violence, the court has to make a determination. So in both cases, it's not just that they make, whether you're talking about voiding the prenup or the best interest of the child and who gets custody and visitation, the court will have a hearing on this and take testimony. receive evidence just like you would in a regular trial, but the standard won't be beyond a reasonable doubt. It'll be preponderance of the evidence, which is like more likely than not that the abuse actually occurred. So it's a very, very low standard, lower than probable cause. It's just like 51% essentially of whether or not the abuse actually occurred. And then if they find that, and then they find that it's not in the best interest of the child, that they're, that someone who is found to be an abuser should have visitation, then he would lose visitation of his child. Then she would receive more child support. So that is what the snowball effect of it could be. But there is that stopgap there where there would be a hearing and the court would make a determination. The court could even determine, like, I do find that there was abuse, but I don't think the abuse related to the child. And with parenting classes and counseling, I'm going to let him have visitation. So it doesn't mean that he gets automatically divested of his rights to his child, but it's not good to have that type of allegation made against you in court. Once again, I have to keep reiterating, I don't know what happened. I don't know if it's true or not. I really have no idea. That's how I felt going into most of these cases. Like, until you actually see testimony, people can make any type of allegation. You just don't know. You have no idea unless you see like video of it, like with the Cassie situation or something. You just don't know. Yeah.
So just to clarify everything that you said, just to bring it all in, now that she's made this allegation, it would go away from the divorce court into a civil court to be tried there? No. So it's still
unless right. It's all going to be in family court. All of this is going to be in family court. And they'll just have a hearing on determining whether or not abuse occurred and if he should have custody as a result of that. And whether or not that's going to cause the prenup to be voided. But there won't be, unless she goes and seeks out criminal charges against him, or the prosecutor hears about the case and the Fulton County Prosecutor's Office decides that they want to pursue a case of domestic violence against him, because they would definitely still be in the statute of limitations, then nothing will come of it on the criminal side. And a lot of times where allegations of abuse are made in these family cases and they don't go to the criminal side. Some people have issues with that. Some people don't think that unless the case was charged criminally and the person was convicted beyond a reasonable doubt, then they should not lose custody or have their prenups voided just because a wife made an allegation of abuse. And then obviously other people completely disagree with that. So that's actually a debate right now within circles that are concerned about family law. Yeah, some people have an issue with that. So I just thought I'd point that out.
I've never seen a divorce case actually go to court. Like, do they normally go to court?
It's rare. Usually, I mean, they usually settle. But the thing that I think, like the child custody stuff, that can be ongoing even after the divorce is finalized. Usually the divorce will just be finalized, especially if both parties agree and they go with no fault. They can just finalize the divorce and then deal with child custody afterwards. And the child custody is usually the thing that takes the longest. And I'm glad you're interested in this case and that you're sharing it with people, because you're right. There is not enough like factual reporting on it that's saying this is what was filed in court. There's a lot of opinion commentary without enough facts to support the opinion. And so I don't think any of us are getting a good idea of what's really going on. Who's at fault, who's not. Is this they're both equally bad or equally good situation? We just don't know. And so you're right to point that out. And it's like, please continue pointing out that, a lot of these news sources are jumping to conclusions, I think maybe based on stereotypes, less than actually analyzing the court paperwork. And if they would start like ordering that court paperwork ourselves, or they need to start releasing it, because they hold on to it. They don't want people to read it and give like full commentary, and they just like slice out little pieces and then write an entire article off of like 2 lines without actually explaining what the legal filings are. So
and I'm glad that you're here to actually fill in those gaps and explain it the best way that you can. And I really do appreciate that. The one thing that has caught me off guard in all of this is where you said that cheating can void your prenup. I never knew that. Knew that.
Yeah, it can void your prenup. And just remember, prenup is just a contract, right? And so you can put almost any conditions in there as long as they're not like illegal. Like, oh, you must have sex with me on Thursdays and Fridays. You cannot contract someone out of consent to sex, for example. Like, you can't do that. Yeah, you can't do that. But like, you can do things like, you get 25% of my estate upon our divorce. However, that goes up to 50% if I'm unfaithful. A lot of times these contracts will have and these unfaithful provisions in them, or for domestic violence. And it's just like what the parties have contracted to and agreed to that that leads to that result.
Again, the motivations behind all of this, I have no idea, but I appreciate you for actually for saying that with me. I'm breaking this all down.
Thank you.
Thank you. No, thank you. Go and check her out. She's amazing. Last time I saw her, she was taking on the man versus bear challenge without the bear, of course.
Go Bear. Kurt disagree with me, but go Bear.
I do love your content. I do love what you put out, and I love your coverage of the Karen Reed trial.
Thank you.
I love that. But yeah, thank you so much for gracing us with your presence, and yeah, I hope that you have a wonderful day.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me. I'll talk to you later.
All right. If you would like extended coverage of cases that we cover, make sure you head over to our sister channel called Catch Up Court, where we go through trial watch, as well as reading filings and giving you comprehensive updates on legal cases. It's all happening over there. Make sure you hit subscribe on there, as well as on here, and hit the like button. I also would like to give a shout out to all the members that have signed up to Heinz. Every single one of you are so important, and that goes for Random Girl and Yelly Bean. I appreciate all of your contributions and for being members. New exclusive videos are coming right to Heinz Halls. We have also launched a Patreon service as well as a Discord, so do keep an eye out on that community tab, because I will be posting updates on there. If you like interviews, you can check out the latest one with a senior lecturer at Manchester Met University, as well as a playlist of all the interviews that I've done for the Debt Be Heard docuseries. But in the meantime, I appreciate every single one of you for taking the time out to watch this video. Take care of yourself and have a great day. Bye bye.